My dear guests, I am Mr. Rourke, your host. Welcome to Fantasy Island. Now, I want to welcome everyone to the very first episode of the Left-Handed Drummer podcast. And I am coming to you live from the captain's chair of my Elisa Surge electronic drum kit and my Zildjian ride cymbal. So this is the very first episode. It's basically going to be a podcast about all things political, music, sports, pretty much whatever I want to talk about. Yeah. You want to talk about what you want to talk about? You go get your own podcast, baby. That's how it works. You dig? All right. So a little bit about myself. I am a police chief in a small town in Iowa. I will not reveal the exact location. Thank you very much. I have been in law enforcement for 30 years, and I am indeed a drummer. I am indeed a left-handed drummer. I am a huge fan of Zildjian cymbals, the greatest cymbals in the world. They just, even their low-end cymbals, their starter pack cymbals sound 10 times better than some of the high-end cymbals of other companies. That's how good Zildjian is. So I am proud to be associated with Zildjian cymbals. But I am a left-handed drummer. I will explain exactly what makes a left-handed drummer in another episode. But I'm also the founder of the Akron River Band. You can check us out. We're on Spotify. Our music is on iTunes, Spotify, Pandora. We're kind of a rock, southern rock, blues, country. We get into a little bit of Motown. Just kind of, the music I grew up with and the music that I like to play, that we like to play. So, but this podcast we'll probably touch on music from time to time. But mainly, we're going to talk about politics and current events. I will admit to you right now, I am another goddamn right-wing conservative. That's right. A MAGA dude all the way, baby. Yeah, that's right. But I'm thoughtful and I'm honest, and I'll tell you what I think. You might not like what I think, but I'll tell you what I think. Assess the situation, and that's how I roll. So we're going to talk a lot about politics, talk about current events. I am on Twitter at Only the Young 751 on Twitter. So if you do a search, I don't know how all that works, but you do a search at Only the Young, and you'll see that I describe myself as a left-handed drummer and a right-handed conservative. Christian, MAGA, Second Amendment, all of the appropriate labels that I have attributed to myself. But yes, if you don't want to see another right-wing, another conservative, then this podcast is not for you. And don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you, baby. I am not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm sure as in the hell not a Democrat. But I am an independent voter. I consider myself a Ronald Reagan conservative. And so that's the way I roll. The last Democrat that I ever voted for in my life was about 30 years ago, and it was a guy that was running for a local city council. And I voted for him because he was a good guy. And he wasn't, he was a Harry Truman Democrat. He wasn't like a, AOC Democrat, which AOC isn't a Democrat. AOC is a communist. But anyway, this guy he was reasonable, and he was a nice guy. And he was on our local EMS service. I was on the police department at the time. And he was, he was a good guy. I'm sure we probably had disagreements on certain social issues and stuff like that, but I thought he was a reasonable guy. And so I voted for him. And he's the last. He holds the distinction. I don't think he cares, really. But he holds the distinction of being the last Democrat that I ever voted for. And he may very well be the last Democrat that I ever vote for, as the way things are going in the current environment. So we'll be talking about politics. I am a Trump supporter. I'd like to see President Trump be reelected or elected to another 4 years in this upcoming election cycle. I hope that's what's going to happen. I will vote for the Republican nominee. I am not into, I'm not into the whole hate Ron DeSantis thing. I think it's kind of silly. Ron DeSantis has been one of the best governors in the history of the state of Florida. And all of a sudden, there's, some Trump supporters out there that are talking about him like he's the Antichrist. I think that's silly. Why are we doing that? Why are we eating our own? And I would remind folks, it's worth pointing out that in 1980, Ronald Reagan, during the primary season, Ronald Reagan and George Bush were bitter rivals. And they clashed. I mean, they were bitter rivals. And what happened with that? They wound up having one of the most successful presidential partnerships in American history. They ended the Cold War together. They created 8% economic growth. They demolished the mafia. They lowered corporate taxes from 77% down to 28%. And we had peace through strength. And, Ronald Reagan, obviously, yes, in the first year or two of his administration, the economy was a bumpy ride, but then he created the greatest freight train of an economy we've ever seen. I know we think Trump did that. Trump got up to about 4% economic growth. Ronald Reagan created 8% economic growth. It was an absolute freight train of an economy. So, and he did that with George Bush, who was a bitter rival. Now, I'm not saying that Trump and DeSantis, the one guy's going to be the other guy's running mate, or that's going to wind up happening. But, you never know about these things. So I would just point to the example of of Ronald Reagan and George Bush in the 1980 election. So I am a little more about myself. I've been married for 19 years. My wife and I have 5 kids between us. They're all grown. Our youngest just turned 18. And she'll be going off to college. And we'll be renting her room out to somebody probably. I don't know. Maybe. So, no, I'm just kidding. Probably won't be renting her room out. But we have 2 dogs. They are German Shepherd Labs. One of them looks like a traditional German Shepherd. The other one looks more like a lab. The one that looks more like a German Shepherd is older. She's 8. Her name is Nikita. The other dog is named Bella. They're both females. Nikita is an extremely territorial dog. Bella, an intruder could come into the house and Bella would be like, "Hey man, come on in, we're having a party," and whereas Nikita would probably kill the guy. So, and Bella doesn't have a mean bone in her body, but she's a spaz. She can't sit still for 2 seconds. She's 5 years old, and she's still a spaz. She just goes 100 miles an hour all day long. So, a little bit about my dogs. We live in a 4-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. I mow an enormous lawn with a push mower. It's not even a self-propelled mower. It's a freaking push mower because I'm the only guy on my block that does not have a riding mower. And that kind of pisses me off. But that's a story for another time. So for this first episode, for this maiden voyage, and to get things underway here, I want to talk about Maui. Let's talk about President Joseph R. Biden Jr.'s disastrous, insulting, horrifying, disgraceful, despicable response to the horrifying events that took place in Maui on the Hawaiian Islands. And in addition to that, we're also going to touch on some of Joe Biden's, what I think are some of his most impressive lies. Joe Biden is a serial liar. And the thing that's just amazing about him is he lies about stuff that can instantly be proven false. I mean, it's just, he lies about stuff that can instantly be fact-checked, and you go, well, that's obviously false. Why would you say that? Because he's a serial liar, and he's a mentally declining imbecile, and he can't help himself. So he says these things all the time. Joe Biden is the worst president I've ever seen in my lifetime. He makes Jimmy Carter look like Winston Churchill, as far as I'm concerned. Now, some people say that James Buchanan was the worst president in American history. I wasn't alive when James Buchanan was president from 1856 to 1860, I believe it was. If there's someone out there who was alive during James Buchanan's presidency, leave a comment and tell me what it was like. Tell me what he was like, if he was worse than Biden. But as far as I'm concerned, in my lifetime, certainly, Joe Biden is the worst president in American history that I know of. In fact, he's so bad that Joe Biden would have to improve about 500% just to rise up to a level, just to come up to a level where we could say that he sucks. That's how bad he is. And his response to the wildfires is pretty typical of him. He doesn't give a crap. He spent, almost half of his presidency on vacation, laying on the beach and, doing nothing except taking naps and playing checkers with the other residents of the nursing home. But let's start with the most obvious thing, the no comment. So Joe Biden is heading out on vacation, and I can't recall if he was coming to or from the beach in Delaware, but he was asked, a reporter asked him, "Mr. President, do you have a comment about the rising death toll in Maui?" And Joe Biden looked at this reporter and smiled from ear to ear and said, "No comment," smiling from ear to ear as if the death of maybe 1,000 people and hundreds of children missing, people incinerated in their cars, as if that's funny somehow. And then he got in the car and, of course, went on vacation because he doesn't give a rat's ass about these people. Why should he? And, he's not here to serve, and he's not in charge anyway. Obviously, we know that. Joe Biden is a mentally declining imbecile, and he's not in charge. So, other people are calling the shots. I mean, they tell Joe Biden, they tell him when to sit, when to stand, when to shit, when to, walk, talk, when to chew gum. He doesn't make any decisions on his own. They tell him who to call on when he gives press conferences. That's how pathetic he is. So, but his response to the wildfires, if you are the president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, the leader of the free world, the leader of the greatest country on the face of the earth, the freest, greatest country on the face of the earth, military superpower, and commonly referred to, commonly widely accepted as the world's most powerful man, if that's what you are, and you can't stop for a few moments to offer some basic words of comfort to people who are suffering, if you're not capable of doing that, after supposedly you got more votes than anyone in history, then you're a piece of shit. What else can we say about you? You're a piece of shit. You're a horrible president. I mean, you can't even stop for a few moments and say, my heart is breaking for these people, and we are going to do everything we can for them. And he doesn't even do that. He smiles from ear to ear as he's getting in the car, and he says, no comment. Smiling. No comment. I have no comment on these people. And let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, let's not forget that Hawaii is not a Republican state, okay? These are Democrat voters in Hawaii. These are the people that voted for him. These people voted for him. And he demonstrated to them that he doesn't give the tiniest little fuck about them. Pardon my French. He doesn't care. He's got to go on vacation. He's going to Tahoe. So then he's on the beach, laying on the beach, a million miles away from what these people are experiencing. He could care less. And then he gets on Air Force One, and he goes to Tahoe. And I don't begrudge any president for going on vacation. Obviously, that's an incredibly stressful job. All presidents have taken vacation. Presidents have played golf. Presidents have gone to all kinds of different places to relax and try to get away from it all as much as they can. Obviously, they can't just, they have to be able to govern the country from wherever they are and be aware of what's going on. So I don't begrudge any president for taking a vacation, but Biden has taken an ungodly amount of vacation since he's been president. And his weekly schedule consists of basically not much. A few handshakes, a few glad handing episodes here and there. And that's about it. And then it's nap time. And then it's off to Delaware to the beach. Occasionally he'll go someplace and he'll give a speech, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But he'll give a speech, and, he'll fumble his words because God knows he can't get through a sentence without sounding like Foster Brooks. You remember that guy that comedian that used to pretend to be drunk? That was his shtick, as they say. That's what Joe Biden sounds like all the time, pretty much giving a speech. He's, the history of America can be summed up in one word. Remember that? Anyway, so then he goes to Tahoe, but then somebody finally decides, maybe we better visit Maui. Maybe we better make an appearance there. I mean, it is an election season, and he thinks he's going to run again, so he goes to Maui, and he's on the ground in Maui, and the first thing is he's talking to some firefighters and walking around, and of course people are having to lead him around because he doesn't know where the fuck he's going half the time. He just go here. Oh no, go here, Mr. President. Oh, where do I go? You ever notice when he steps away from the podium, he looks around like, where do I go now? Because he has no idea where the hell he is. So somebody's got to lead him away. Oh, right this way, Mr. President. Yeah, because he's an imbecile. So he's on the ground with some firefighters, I think they were, first responders, and they've got a dog. And I don't know if this was a rescue dog, a cadaver dog of some type, looked like either a lab or maybe a golden retriever of some sort. And Biden's talking to this guy, this fireman, and the dog's there, and Biden says something like, "You got feet on the hot ground?" And the guy's looking at him like, "What? What? You got the feet? You got the dogs? You got hot feet on the hot ground?" What? What? You got feet on the hot ground? What? He probably was like, I don't know what to make of that. You got feet, your feet on the hot ground or whatever. I don't know what and then there's this dog there, right? And Biden's, he looks at the dog, and he looks like he has no idea what this creature is. He's looking at him like, yeah, and the fireman's like, "It's a dog." "It's a dog, Mr. President. It's a dog." And Biden's like, "Oh, yeah, it's a dog. Yeah." And then he wants to reach out and he starts petting the dog's head, right? "Yeah, that's it, Mr. President. Pet the dog. You pet the doggy. Nice doggy. Yeah. Nice doggy. Pet the doggy. Yeah." And Biden's petting the top of the dog's head, and nice doggy. Nice doggy, isn't he? Yes, he's a nice doggy. He's a lot nicer than that goddamn thing you keep at the White House that keeps attacking your Secret Service agents, isn't he? Yes, this is a nice doggy, not like that other hellhound that you have at the White House. Right, nice doggy. So, and then I assume somebody after that had to come and lead him away and tell him where to go and where to walk. And here, sit down in this car here and we'll take you to your next destination, which was to give a speech at a gathering of the victims' families. Now, Biden's given this speech at this, I think it was a luncheon or a dinner or something. And because Biden, doesn't know what else to do, he does what he always does, and he starts making it about himself. Right? Because it's all about him in the end. It doesn't matter where he is. He's like, hey, just to let you know. He's talking to some truck drivers, and he says, yeah, I drove a truck too. I talked to Big Mama on the CB radio, And then, he tells the Kansas City Chiefs at their, when he has them at the White House because they won the Super Bowl, about his own football career, and the Kansas City Chiefs, these guys are standing there going, yeah, no. But, he told them, I was a pretty good football player back in my day too, wasn't I? Yep. And they're like standing there going, no, I don't think so. So he's always got to try to, make it about him. And this is no exception. So he's talking to these folks, and all of a sudden, he decides, that a devastating wildfire that torched Lahaina, Maui, and maybe killed 1,000 people, possibly as many as 1,000 people. Some of these people have been incinerated in their cars because they were blocked from escaping on one of the only escape routes from Lahaina to get away from the wildfires, while the fires is literally coming up behind them, and they're blocked. They can't escape. So some of these people just were burned to death in their cars. And these people have children that are missing, that are unaccounted for. And, this is just this is one of the worst tragedies in American history. And Biden gets up there and starts telling everybody about his horrifying kitchen fire that happened 19 years ago. And how this is really bad fire. Yeah. I almost lost my 67 Corvette. Now imagine being a parent of a child. You have no idea where your child is. You have no idea if your child's dead or alive. Or you're a parent that's lost your children in this fire or lost loved ones in this fire. And this jackass is telling you about how traumatizing it was that he almost lost his 67 Corvette. Can you imagine that? And you're sitting there listening to this? Just the lack of empathy is just staggering. It's just unbelievable. The lack of empathy for these folks. Talking about your 67 Corvette. And by the way, the house fire, the kitchen fire thing, that story has changed over time, hasn't it? Originally, he said he lost his house. And he did not lose his house. Then he said he lost, most of his house, or a good portion of his house. He did not lose a good portion of his house. He told so many lies about this incident, this kitchen fire, that the local fire department had to set the record straight, where they issued a statement saying, sorry, I'm paraphrasing, but they said, in terms of our view of things, this was not a big deal. This fire was not what we would call a big deal. We realize that any fire in the home is traumatic for the family, but as firefighters and as fires go, this wasn't what we would call a big deal of a fire. The fire was contained in less than 20 minutes, and it was contained to the kitchen. So he didn't lose his home. He didn't almost lose his home. He didn't almost lose his 67 Corvette. And so this is just, Joe Biden being Joe Biden, making it about him, and telling this cockamamie story about how he almost lost his 67 Corvette, standing in front of a bunch of people that had their children and their loved ones and their families incinerated. Okay, that's how much of an asshole this guy is. Then he lies about the fire. He can't even help himself. He lies about the firefighters. I watched the firemen that day fighting bravely this fire in our house. No, he didn't watch the firemen. He was 2 hours away in Washington, D.C. The fire was at his home in Wilmington, Delaware. He wasn't watching the firemen. By the time he got home, the fire had long been put out. He didn't watch the firemen do anything. So there's lie upon lie upon lie. And but, he can't help himself. He can't help himself. He has no empathy for these people. In 1993, I was born and raised in Des Moines, Iowa. And in 1993, the entire city of Des Moines, or most of Des Moines, flooded because there's a lot of rain that happened that year. Devastating floods. The Raccoon River overflowed, and Des Moines flooded. And President Bill Clinton came to Des Moines, and believe me, I certainly have my issues with Bill Clinton, to be sure. But Bill Clinton came to Des Moines, and I recall very vividly, he was standing on Fleur Drive in Des Moines. What was Fleur Drive? He's somewhere in that area. And there was a little girl there. And she said, "Mr. President, please help us." And he put his arm around this little girl, and he said, "Everything's going to be all right." That's how you do it. That's what you do. And Des Moines rebuilt. The water receded eventually, and damage was repaired, and lives were restored, and lives went on. That's what you do. You don't stand there and talk about your little kitchen fire and how the trauma of almost losing your 67 Corvette to people who have had their lives destroyed, their families destroyed, their children incinerated in this inferno. And that's the level of empathy that he has, just to make it about him and, of course, lie. Tell stories that are just absurd. So, but just imagine being the parent of a child listening to that, listening to this dumbass stand up there and talk about his 67 Corvette. That's a disgrace. This man is totally incapable of anything resembling presidential leadership. Incapable. Absolutely disgraceful. And I wonder if Joe Biden was on the plane coming over to Maui and he's sitting there with Jill. He goes, "I know what I'll do. I'll tell him the story about our kitchen fire. We'll relate to him that way. These, people. I'll just tell him about our kitchen fire because, that was pretty bad. And how horrifying it was that I almost lost a car in that kitchen fire that was contained in less than 20 minutes and contained to the kitchen. And I didn't lose my home, even though I've lied about that in the past and said I lost my home. And I didn't lose my home. But anyway, I'll tell him about that. How about that? And if I've got time, maybe I'll throw in some stories about what a great college football player I was or something, to tell him how impressive I am. Or, and we'll get to Joe Biden's lies here in in just a few minutes. But, and maybe, I don't know, maybe Jill was like, you know what? Maybe I tell you what, Joe, maybe I should do something to connect with these people too. Maybe I should wear the taco dress again. Because the people of Maui, maybe, they're kind of like breakfast tacos. Remember that? When she said she's meeting with the Hispanic people and she says, you're all a bunch of breakfast tacos. Holy shit. Excuse me. Holy shit. You gotta be kidding me. You're all a bunch of breakfast tacos. So, that's how we'll relate to these folks, right? I'll tell them about my kitchen fire. And then for an encore, okay, because that's not enough. After he's done talking, he's sitting in the audience, and there's a presentation going on, with the victims. And, I'm sorry, but it was Joe Biden's nap time, baby. And Joe Biden's like, what? Who said what to who? What? He's asleep. He's in a room full of victims of an ungodly catastrophe, and he's asleep. And he's the president of the United States, and he's sleeping. Where have we seen this before? Oh, yeah. Let's see. We were checking our watch when soldiers that were killed during his disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, their caskets came off the plane, and he's standing there going, you know what? Is this going to be over soon? Because I got someplace to be. I got to get going here. Come on, let's get the caskets off the plane a little faster, folks. Come on, move it. I got stuff to do here. He just, oh my God, he just falls asleep. Because it's nap time. And again, keep in mind, Hawaii is run by Democrats. Maui is run by Democrats. Lahaina is run by a Democrat mayor. And these are his people. These are Biden voters. And I'm not going to be one of those guys that says, you know what? You got what you deserve. Nobody deserves this. Nobody deserves to be killed in a fire, to have your children. Don't even go there. My point of it is the fact that these are not like the people in East Palestine, Illinois, that, apparently, as I understand it, were primarily overwhelmingly Trump voters. And so Biden said, these people are Trump voters. I don't give a fuck about them, do I? No, I don't. What do you think there, Pete Buttigieg? Huh? How about that? What are we going to do for these folks in East Palestine, Ohio? Well, Pete Buttigieg, the prepubescent wonder boy, he's off trying to rid the world of racist highways and bridges. So he can't be bothered with people in Palestine, Ohio that have been affected by a train derailment that poisoned their community. Come on. He can't be bothered with that kind of stuff. Because those are Republicans. Those are Trump voters. But these people in Hawaii is a Democrat state. Hawaii is run by Democrats. These are his own voters. And he treated him with a level of indifference that is just staggering. I'm just looking at this going, you got to be kidding me. This is the level of empathy you have? Absolutely disgraceful. If Trump had, I hate to point out the obvious, but if Trump was president and he had the exact same response to the Maui fires that Joe Biden had, Trump would be getting crucified by the media right now, and rightfully so. He'd be getting crucified. Yeah. So there's that. And we know that, don't we? We do. And yet the media is, it's all just crickets with them. They're silent as a Monday morning church when it comes to holding Biden accountable for his disgusting and just totally unacceptable behavior as president of the United States. So now we're going to talk about, since we just touched on Biden's varying accounts of his, cataclysmic kitchen fire in 2004, we're going to talk about Joe Biden's lies, some of his best lies of all time. This is going to be fun. All right, here we go. Joe Biden's, in my view, some of Joe Biden's biggest lies. Let's see. I attended Delaware State. That was a lie. So Joe Biden's giving a speech to a black audience, and I don't know if it was Howard University. I think it might have been a black university, but he's giving a speech. And by the way, the media said that Joe Biden never claimed that he attended Delaware State. Yes, he did. So the media is just covering up for his lies. That's how dishonest the media is. CNN and MSNBC or MSDNC, whatever you like, came out and said Joe Biden never said that he attended Delaware State. Yes, he did. Here's what his exact words were. Quote, I got my start at an HBCU, Delaware State. So I don't want to hear anything bad about Delaware State. I got my start at an HBCU, Delaware State. And thank you, Delaware State, for setting the record straight on this. They issued a statement stating Joe Biden never attended school here. Joe Biden didn't go to Delaware State. No. He just didn't. Okay? Okay. So that was a lie. That was one of his lies. I graduated near the top of my class in law school. Yeah, I graduated near the top of my class. You know what? I graduated near the top of my class in law school. No, he did not. He graduated, it turned out, 76th in his class out of a class of 82 students. So he graduated near the bottom of his class, not the top of his class. And again, he tells lies about stuff that could be instantly fact-checked. As if we're just, this man must think we've got stupid written across our foreheads. And we can't fact-check this stuff. We got Google, baby. We can check stuff now. You can be fact-checked. Even if the liberal media won't fact-check you, we can fact-check you. And he lies about stuff that is, it'd be like me saying, if I said that I was Elvis Presley's drummer. Did you know that? I played the drums for Elvis Presley. Yeah. Yeah. Never mind the fact that I was only 10 years old when Elvis Presley died. You didn't know Elvis Presley's drummer was 10 years old, did you? No. No. Obviously, we can find out pretty fast that I was not Elvis's drummer. Elvis had a longtime drummer by the name of Ronnie Tutt. Elvis had another drummer by the name of Larry London, who went on to be the drummer for Journey. He went on to replace Steve Smith in Journey in the mid-'80s. but the drummer that's mostly closely associated with Elvis is Ronnie Tutt, who just recently passed. So these are things that, you could find out pretty quickly and verify that. But not Biden. No, Biden just tells this crap like, what do these people know? They know where they're going. So I was a professor at the University of Pennsylvania for 4 years. Yeah, I taught classes at the University of Pennsylvania. Okay. So the University of Pennsylvania, the truth, made him an honorary professor. Honorary professor. And he never taught a single class. So that was a lie. So they made him an honorary professor. So we'll give him credit for a half-truth. But he wasn't a functioning professor. It was an honorary position. And he never taught a single class. Not one. Not a single. He didn't even substitute for anybody. He wasn't an adjunct, assistant. He never taught a single class at the University of Pennsylvania or anywhere else. This is great. He's talking to the families of the 13 service members that were killed because of his disgusting, despicable withdrawal from Afghanistan. They were killed by the suicide bomber. And he's talking to their families. And this man actually he's like, you're not really going to go there, are you, Joe? You're not really you're going to go there? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to go there. Uh-huh. And he tells them that, yeah, I know how it feels to lose somebody. We lost my son Bo, in Iraq. Implying that Bo was killed in action in Iraq. Okay, Bo Biden was not killed in action in Iraq. Bo Biden came home. He did serve in Iraq, and God bless him for that. Joe Biden's son, Bo Biden, came home from Iraq and unfortunately was diagnosed with cancer and passed away in 2015. He was not killed in Iraq, but Joe Biden's telling the families of the Afghan soldiers that are killed that his son died in Iraq. That's an egregious lie. Just absolutely disgusting, ridiculous lie. We covered the house burned down. He's changed several stories about his house burned down in the fire. We almost lost my house in a fire. We lost most of my house. We lost 25% of my house. So, no. He had a kitchen fire that the fire department had out in less than 20 minutes. And he claimed that he stood there and watched the firefighters and bravely put out the fire. And he did not watch the firefighters. He was in Washington, D.C. When he got back to his house, the fire had long since been put out. So that was a lie. Here comes my favorite one. We'll save the best for last. We'll save that one for last. Depending on what ethnic group he's talking to, that's who he grew up on a street with. Have you noticed that? So we've been told that at one time or another that Joe Biden grew up on a street full of Polish people, or that he grew up on a street full of Italians, or that he grew up on a street full of Irish people. That in his neighborhood, a neighborhood full of Irish people, a neighborhood full of Polish people, neighborhood full of... If Joe Biden was talking to the Bushmen of the Kalahari, he would claim that he grew up on a street with African tribesmen. That's how dumb he is. That's how much of a serial liar he is. So that's where he's changed. Then he said that he was the only Irish person on his block. So that story, changes in and out. Then, of course, he claimed that he got cancer from motor oil on his windshield in Delaware. That, the windshield wipers would wipe the motor oil off, and that's what gave us cancer. Yeah, that was a lie. of course, I mentioned before he was talking with some truck drivers, I think it was somewhere, and he said, I drove a truck too, and I talked to Big Mama on the CB radio. Yeah. Now, we can't confirm if that's a lie, but do you believe that? Given what all those dumbass stories this man tells? No, of course not. And then there's the corn pop incident where Joe Biden claimed that he was at a public swimming pool and he had some kind of confrontation with a local gangbanger, who go by the name of Corn Pop. And allegedly, Joe Biden says to this Corn Pop, I don't know what the confrontation was about, but they're at it, you know, they're standing there face to face. And apparently Corn Pop's got a knife and Joe Biden's got a chain, right? And supposedly Joe Biden says to Corn Pop, you might cut me, but I'm going to wrap this chain around your neck. Okay. And nobody obviously can confirm that ever happened or deny that ever happened, but I don't believe that ever happened. I think that story is a heaping, steaming pile of bullshit. I don't think Joe would have ever had the backbone or the stones to face off with a gang member. I don't think so. Particularly a gang member armed with a knife. So I think that's a bunch of BS. And of course, he claimed he was a highly recruited college football player. That was bullshit. He claimed that he was in South Africa and he was trying to see Nelson Mandela on, you know, his prison on Robben Island in South Africa, and that he got arrested for trying to see Nelson Mandela. Joe Biden was never arrested in South Africa. That's a lie. He made that story up out of absolute thin air. Total bullshit. But I wanted to save the best one for last. And that is, oh yes, Uncle Frank's Purple Heart. This one is fantastic. I mean, the fact that Joe decided to tell this story is fantastic. I mean, you just go, are you kidding me? You really told that story? Yeah, he told this story. Joe Biden. So Joe Biden had an Uncle Frank Biden, who was a World War II veteran, and God bless him. And Joe Biden said that his uncle was nominated for the Purple Heart, but never received Purple Heart. That very well could be true. I don't know about that. Joe Biden said that when he became vice president in 2009, his father, Joseph Biden Sr., called him up, had a conversation with him, and said, you know, Joe, your Uncle Frank fought in World War II, and he was supposed to receive a Purple Heart, and he never received his Purple Heart. And it sure would be nice if now you're Vice President of the United States, if you could personally present Uncle Frank with his Purple Heart that he so richly deserves. And now keep in mind, this is 2009 that Joe's having this conversation with his father. So Joe said that they went to Uncle Frank's house and Joe had a Purple Heart, and tried to present it to his Uncle Frank. Said, "Here, Uncle Frank, I want to give you this Purple Heart for your service in the war, in World War II." And the story goes that he said his Uncle Frank wouldn't accept it, and he tried to pin it on him. He said, "I don't want it. I don't want to accept it." And his Uncle Frank apparently refused to accept the Purple Heart. That was in 2009 that Joe met with his Uncle Frank to give him a Purple Heart. Uncle Frank turned him down, said, "I don't want the Purple Heart." And in 2009, this started with a conversation that Joe had with his father, Joe Biden Sr., saying, "Let's give Uncle Frank a Purple Heart." And Joe said, "Agreed." Yep. So he talked to his father in 2009 about this. And then it was revealed that Frank Biden, let's start with Joe Biden Sr., that Joe Biden Sr. died in 2002. And yet somehow Joe Biden magically had a conversation with his dead father in 2009. And then he personally presented his Uncle Frank with the Purple Heart, or he tried to. And then we found out that, wait a minute, Uncle Frank Biden, World War II veteran, died in 1999. So Joe Biden presented his Uncle Frank, met with his Uncle Frank, went to his Uncle Frank's house and walked with him and tried to give him a Purple Heart 10 years after his Uncle Frank was dead and deceased. That one's one of the best ones ever. And even the liberal media said, Joe Biden's story about Uncle Frank's Purple Heart doesn't add up. You think? Because the two other people involved with the story were dead. They were dead. And Joe was very specific. He said this took place when he was vice president in 2009. And yeah, Uncle Frank and his father, Joseph Biden Sr., were both dead in 2009. So Joe did not meet with his father in 2009, and he did not meet with his Uncle Frank in 2009 because they were dead. So he made that story up. I don't know if his Uncle Frank ever did receive a Purple Heart. I don't know. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he was nominated for it. Certainly, if he was wounded in battle in World War II, he should have received a Purple Heart. And I'm grateful for his Uncle Frank's service. But that was another one of Joe Biden's. That's one of his best lies ever. I had to save the best for last because that one's fantastic. Uncle Frank's Purple Heart. So there you go. There is Joe Biden's disastrous Maui response, my take on that, and just a little rundown of Joe Biden's greatest lies of all time. And I'm sure this is a work in progress. So it's a work in progress, and there's, I'm sure, many more lies to come. And we'll get into a lot more with Joe Biden and the current state of affairs in the United States of America in the next episode. Please subscribe, hit the subscribe button, leave comments all you want. Tell me I'm an asshole. Tell me whatever you want. I don't care. It's fine. And we will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye. Have a great day. God bless.